I have food poisoning.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's Fantasy Fiends podcast. I am so happy to see you from yesterday. If you did not come to the podcast yesterday, we had so many awesome authors talking about magical swords. But today we have Elise with us, and we have another awesome topic. I am Stevie Collier, your host, and we are with my co-host, Andy Peliquin. What's up? What's happening?
And your cat's butthole again. A repeat guest from last week.
It's cat buttholes, dude. My life revolves around cat buttholes. Buttholes. Elise, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. The door to my office is closed because if it wasn't, there would be cat butthole happening here as well. So I know your pain.
And the weekly guest drops to our level. It's going to be a good show.
Monkey. So I was going to ask you if you had cat butthole in your life, but I guess you do.
I do. I do have cat butthole in my life. In the morning, in the evening. You never know when it's going to happen.
I want candle scents with that. Yankee should come out with a candle scent.
No, Stevie. No. Bad.
Bad, Stevie. So,
back on track.
Back on track. And so, Elise, what we do with our podcast is we usually start with something cool that happened to you this week, and which was what Andy was saying when we just kind of throw you into it. But we can definitely go first. And Andy, did you have something cool that happened to you this week?
Oh, I have so many cool things that happened to me this week. All the cool things. So as of today, Silent Champions Book 4, which is the core 4 books of the series, is officially complete. 800,000 words between those 4 books. It is ridiculous how long they became, but it's finally done. I wrapped up the story. So happy to get that done because that's been weighing on my mind for, well, you know, the 2 months that I've been writing it or something. But not only did I get that one finished and sent off to the beta readers, but book 3 is polished and sent off to the editor, which means for about the next 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, I don't have to write anything new. I can just edit, I can study, I can do marketing, I can enjoy life just a little bit more than I did. So I'm very excited to not have to write anything new. I know it sounds bad for a writer to say something like that, but the creation of utterly new things is very draining in a way that people who write will absolutely understand. You know, editing is a headache in and of itself that will never not drain you. But creating new things, it takes this emotional toll on you. Like the chapter that I spent both today and yesterday working on, it's 10,000 word epilogue. It was the emotional climax for all of the characters, the payoff of every single plot line that I've, not resolved through, by the climax. So much happened in those 10,000 words, and each aspect of that scene was just so emotionally exhausting. So I'm very glad to be done with it so that I can just, do the much more mindless, studying and reading and things like that.
I saw that you finished it, and I clapped for you because I have 6 pages left before the 5th and final book is done.
That's awesome.
Dude.
The one thing that I need to figure out now over the next month or so is whether I'm going to write the companion novel book 6 or if I'm going to give myself a little break, because the one thing that I learned about military fantasy is that it's way too involved.
That's why I'm not going to do it.
Way too complicated. I mean, it's so much fun. I would never trade this series for anything else. I had so much fun writing it, but everything is just so complex.
Here's a question for you. Do you think that you could now better run like a squadron or a platoon of soldiers than you could before you started?
Not really. I could do a little bit more tactically speaking.
That's what I'm
come
saying.
Up with things like that, but I wouldn't know the first thing about actual military stuff. Like, did you know that in the military they train you not to shoot to kill, but shoot to wound? I had no idea of this.
Isn't it for the screaming?
No, well, that, but also it takes not just 1 but 2 soldiers to drag the wounded men away, which means by wounding 1, you've taken 3 out of the fight.
Ooh.
And so it's depleting the other person's resources.
Wow, and so that made my nipples hard.
A totally different thing. And actually, I don't remember where I saw it, but it might have been Black Mirror. They were talking about that humans didn't kill each other. Like the even in World War I, the riflemen would shoot over the heads of the enemy to sort of
heard that.
Disorganize them, inflict terror rather than mass casualties. It's only in the last 100 years or so that it's been all about just death. So it's a whole new approach. It's a whole new side of things that I had never experienced, and I probably will never experience because I'm far too old to join the military.
I was gonna say when we kind of skipped over, but my grandpa told me that they would shoot people because the screaming scared the shit out of other people. So like if my friend gets shot in the side, he starts screaming like, "Oh God, what did I get myself signed into? Damn it!" I would pretend like I was wounded. And what was it? I think it was either World War II where soldiers were banging hammers on their freaking hands to get out of fighting. I learned that in French class. Yeah, French, not just French soldiers, but they would harm themselves to get out of the trenches and stuff. And if you got found, now here's where it's unclear to me, but I think you might have actually been killed for that. I know it was like a form of what's that? Whenever you refuse to take orders, what is it?
Desertion, like
I think it was a form
and
of
insubordination. Yeah,
something like that. But I don't remember if it was punishable by death. Maybe someone in the chat knows. But yeah, that's interesting, Andy. I don't know anything about. I don't think I could write military fantasy, not because I don't think I'd have the skill, but I just don't want to put the time and effort into the research. I'm not a research guy, Andy, like you are. I use like daily experience. That's why I feel like people get better as writers as they age. Kind of like a fine wine. I think. I don't know.
You don't drink a lot of fine wine, Stevie. It's all like
I drink wine and wake up dead. So I think I already said my cool thing of the week, and that is this will be the first time I've ever finished a 5-book series. I have 6 pages left, and I'm procrastinating because I don't want it to end. It's kind of sad. Also, for I believe the third time in my life, my writing has made me cry. And this was the first time that actually like a tear dropped out. So usually my eyes just get a little bit watery, but this actually made a tear drop out of my eye and onto my nose, and I wiped it. I was like, "Damn, son, you getting good." But no, the worst part was the sentence needed work, so I had to keep reliving the damn sentence over and over again. I was like, "Ah, shit, come on." Which is cool. So that is my good news. The Forsaken Blade has 6 pages left, and it's off to the editor, and it releases in like 5 days. So I got to get it up on Kindle by Friday. And Andy, I need help with blurbs. Come on, man. Sprinkle some blurb wisdom onto me.
Yeah, definitely.
Just all over my chest.
Sprinkling some blurb wisdom on you, Stevie.
Yes,
I'm sending good blurb wisdom as well.
Send those vibes, blurb vibes. So, okay, Elise, tell us not only a little bit about yourself, but something. Your last name is Kova. It sounds like
Kova. Yeah,
Kova. That sounds so familiar. Why does it sound familiar to me? Are you?
Maybe we knew each other in a past life, and my name was still Kova.
It sounds like you're what are those people that live in igloos? That's right. Oh, yeah, the Amish. That's right. What are those igloo people? What are their names? Inuits. Muskrats. Inuits. Kova, it sounds like I'm not gonna make fun of your name anymore. I apologize. Go ahead, Elise. It's your turn to talk. I'm gonna go quiet a little bit.
You're good. You're good. Yeah, I don't know. I live in Florida. We were talking about anime before that, so I watch anime, I play video games, and write books that have magic in them. And that's kind of my jam. I guess a cool thing that happened to me. I'll join the bandwagon and I'll say, well, 2 things. One, book related. I got off my manuscript to the editor Monday morning for developmental edits, which is my least favorite part.
So what's your worst part?
Developmental edits. So
who do you have doing that for you?
My editor is Rebecca Faith Editorial. So she does my developmental edits and goes into the line edits as well.
Yeah, I've got my editor does that too. He is so cool.
Yeah.
Shout out to my editor boy.
He's so busy though.
My editor, I constantly am like, she's my work wife. We've worked together now on, it would be 13 books. Wow. I think it is at this point that we've worked together. So we definitely have a good rapport, and It's a great relationship, and I love her, and she's talented. But so yeah, that's my book related stuff. And then I went out paddleboarding this past week, and I found a tunnel through some mangroves and
Ooh.
paddled through it, and it was really cool because they were all around me. But then I realized that the mangroves were calling with little crabs, and I was like, oh my
Oh
god, please don't
God.
get on my paddleboard.
Do you surf?
Not that well. I did grow up surfing because I grew up in Florida. So
Cool.
I grew up in the Cocoa Beach area and surfed a bunch then, but I did a lot more windsurfing than regular surfing.
I'd love to try windsurfing. I didn't grow up surfing, but I got decent because I dated someone who's a surfer, and I wasn't gonna let her be better than me, but I never got better than her. Never, never. But then I fell in love with more surfing than her. But anyway, no, that's not true.
If you can surf, Stevie, we got to get you up here for some snowboarding this winter.
Dude, I would die. I
Dude,
would.
it
I
is
mean,
so different. It
is
is
it?
so
I mean,
different.
I was hoping.
I had everyone be like, "Oh, if you can surf, you should try snowboarding." I tried snowboarding and I'm like, "Okay, here's the thing. When I fall off a surfboard, it doesn't hurt and it's warm."
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're from Cali, but you have a wetsuit on, so
Yeah.
I would be afraid to surf Florida waters. I've heard way too many scary things about sharks.
Really?
Yeah, like that's what I've always heard. But if you go Northern California, you got those freaking great whites. So
Yeah, I don't know. We might have those down here. I'm not really sure. Florida is kind of like the Australia or the US. There's always something
yeah,
trying to kill you in here down here. So I'm just
people eating faces off.
people eating faces,
That's
it
normal.
happens.
That's normal. Well, that's cool, Elise. And check out her books on Amazon. She has a freaking ton of them. One with 645 reviews. I hate you, Elise. I hate you. No, that's awesome.
Feelings
That's really
mutual.
cool. So you write
I'm
female
just kidding.
protagonists?
Yeah, I write female protagonists. My Loom saga, which is finished at 3 books, that has a split point of view, and 2 of the points of view are male protagonists. So I have written from male points of view, but predominantly female protagonists.
That's awesome. And you said you were finishing up. I needed to get some developmental editing done. I need to. I think I'll do it for the next book that I do. It just kind of slows down the process a whole lot, and I don't like slowing down.
Yeah, but my favorite thing, see, I find that I need it because I do draft very quickly, and I kind of need that person to force me to take a step back and to let things simmer and then come back to it with more fresh eyes, as well as to have someone come back and push back on certain things that there
Mm.
may be things that I did in my initial draft that they were just the path of least resistance and they're not the best choice to make for one reason or another. And having someone kind of, for lack of better words, call me on my shit
Whoa,
is
yeah.
really helpful.
I had an editor that Andy and most of the people who are watching this know this, but if she got to a point where she didn't like it, she would just put "I hate this" and would move on. And I don't know why. I just would read it I'd hear it in my head. It's just "I hate this," like the Wicked Witch of the West or something. But anyway,
If they say that with no explanation, then it's the wrong way to edit. If they say I hate this because, then it's amazing.
No, it'd just be single "I hate this" with no capital I and no punctuation. But real quick, something else that I did that was really cool. I went and hung out in Philly. As many of you know, my mom has 2 rare spinal diseases, Chiari and syringomyelia, which means her brain is seeping down into her spine, and syringo is like a nasty ass tumor in her spine. So we go to this conference, and it's like a support group and stuff like that. Really positive people. But the cool thing about the conference is we also got to go hang out with in Philly. And guess what? Your boy Stevie did. He got cultured. He got really cultured because guess what I did for a whole day? I went and hung out with the Amish. And I mean that for every sense of the word. I went for 8 hours and hung out with 3 Amish families. You talk about feeling like less of a man. While I'm talking, there's like this 8-year-old boy. I feel like he's like bench pressing some cows in the backyard. No, he's like, the boys and the girls, they all do the milking, and it is the nastiest work I've ever seen. They're milking while the cow's pooping, and it sounds like it's not that bad. It's horrible, and they're just tough, and they're so family oriented. I was so ignorant when I went into the Amish families, not in a negative way, but maybe in a negative way. I was just like, why don't they want to grow with with everything that we've got going on and stuff? And really, it didn't seem like they needed it. They were so happy with their family, and the dad would like get random hugs from the little boy and girl. The only problem I saw with the Amish, and this is a known fact, is that they have a problem with inbreeding. And it was kind of apparent with a few people. And that is because, yes, you can't legally marry your second cousin, but they do end up marrying cousins because there aren't that many of them. But besides that, it was eye-opening and slightly scary. At the last part of the day, we went to this Amish home, and it was completely dark. So we sat in a completely dark kitchen with a candle, and I felt like we were about to call up some ghosts. And I asked, what do you guys do? And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, well, what do you do at night? Because there's a French phenomenon called divertissement, which means the world is the world is run by distraction, video games, movies. And all they would do is sit around and tell stories. And once they found out that I was an author, they're like, what do you write? What do you write? And I was like, don't tell them, Stevie, that you wrote about a gooch troll, because they're incredibly Christian, But it was fascinating. If you want to know anything about the Amish, don't ask me. No. Really cool stuff. They make the best food in the world. And yeah, if you can imagine Stevie Collier in an Amish household, then yeah, you pretty much have the idea of how it went down. You give yourself a little laugh there. But yeah, something cool that I did this past week. And if you follow me on Snapchat, I'll link it in the YouTube. Yeah, I am sheltered, but you think I'm sheltered? Go meet the Amish, for real. And I handshook one of the wives, and it felt like I was handshaking with somebody who wore like those big ass leather gloves. It was crazy. It was crazy. They could probably bench press me. Anyway, rant over. Sorry, those poor people. Yes, I asked many questions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Elise, there's a question. There's a question from someone on the chat asking how to pronounce Cvareh.
Oh, Svare.
And what sort of language origin is that? Like, what sort of pronunciation is that?
My own?
Okay. I was gonna say that's super, like Siobhan in Irish or something, or in Celtic. The spelling sounds nothing like the way you pronounce it.
Yeah, it's usually the CV that once I kind of get across it's the soft C, sound. The rest is pretty phonetic. Svare. Yeah.
It's a cool name.
Thanks. It's one of my characters from the Loom Saga. One of the male point of view characters.
Very cool. Someone was asking, someone who I think had read it before. Anyways, let us dive into the topic of the week.
Before I said let us die. It's like, okay, Andy, we know you write dark fantasies. Real quick, I wanted to point out that when Andy and I first started this podcast over a year ago, we were talking to no one but ourselves. And I highly suggest you go watch episode 1. It's not cringy. It's heartwarming because two young whippersnappers just chewing the cud with each other. And it's kind of sweet to go watch that. And now, kind of brings tears to your eyes that we are now streaming to 13 people, which is amazing. So guys, thank you so much for your continued support. And Gooch Troll power to you. All right, Andy, go ahead.
Stevie ruining every intelligent moment on the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Anyways, on to more intelligent things. The topic of the week was suggested by Elise, and I really like it because it's one that I think every one of us have questioned or have played with or have thought about at some point in our lives, is the truth versus perspective. A lot of people say that truth is a matter of perspective. Depending on where you're standing, your truth will change, and that's something that, like playing with the hunter, Varamus, an assassin, or Alana, the thief. Right, already right there, whatever their belief is, it's gonna be totally shaped by their perspective. So it's vastly different from anybody else's. But then now, like, bring it into our modern lives. Everything we know everything that we're fed by the media, by the TV shows that we watch, whatever, whatever it is that we get information from, it is what shapes our perspective, and in a way that perspective shapes our truth, our understanding. And then so it's kind of like this vicious cycle where we see something one way, so we believe something strongly, and then because of those beliefs, we continue to see the world through those eyes. And so it's like this cycle that continues onward. And like if we only persist in our belief of the truth and our perspective, we're never going to understand everything. So it's all about finding, outside truths and perspectives outside our own little circle in order to expand our minds.
That's that's a really hard thing for most people to do. And I wouldn't say that people if you're watching our chat, I would think you have a much better chance, if you're not already doing it. And Andy, are we talking about awakening and awareness?
No, we're just talking about perspective, truth versus perspective. There is a certain element of awareness in
That's
it.
what I
Like
mean.
when you understand that your perspective is limited, right? That you can
Mhm.
only see things through one set of eyes, then you start to be a bit more aware of the world around you. You start looking for truths outside of your own. And that's when you're like you say, I guess maybe that's what awakening means. You're awakening.
That's what I meant.
You
Exactly.
become woke.
Well, exactly. Hashtag woke. And I think Rebecca and I can both play to this, being raised Catholics. It's either you're Catholic or, in my experience, you go to hell.
Pretty much.
Anyway, Elise is like, wait, I didn't know we were talking about religion.
No, actually, I'm kind of laughing because I've been fortunate, unfortunate, where I've kind of had both experiences. I was raised Catholic, and I get kind of what you're coming from on that. I my family was fairly Catholic. Like, I have a great uncle who's a bishop.
Wow.
And I actually have a very close friend right now who is training to be a Jesuit brother. I actually just saw him for the first time in a year because he's been cloistered, because that's kind of the training that they go through. But it's been sort of really enlightening. Disclaimer, I guess, I'm not a very religious person myself personally. That's complicated and a whole lot of levels that we don't have time for today. But it is one of those things where I have had both of those experiences of like the sort of really rigid kind of perspective, and then the perspective of being really open. But to bring it sort of back to what we're talking about, and not just Catholicism, I think what's interesting is you have sort of those two groups of people. You have the people who are quite rigid, and you have the people who are quite open. But I think what's interesting to think about, and that I've sort of become more of aware of as I've gotten older, is that both of those groups of people, and the people within them, they are espousing what they believe to be true. And it was something that I started thinking about a lot going back to anime. When I would go to anime conventions, my local anime convention has this dude who stands out there with a sign reading the Bible and whatnot. And
yeah, the Westboro
the
Baptist.
sign is, I don't think it's Westboro, but it's definitely would be a friend.
Oh,
if they're not.
I was fortunate enough to run into those at every single convention I attended in California and New York.
They came to the convention?
Oh, they hang out outside of every large convention.
Yeah, they do that here too. Like I said, I don't know what denomination this man is, and I don't want to pin it on one or another, but I do think it's interesting because it was something that I thought of where, the things that this gentleman would say and what his sign read, I found so appalling and so horrible. But there's always that moment for me where I would sit and I would think, he thinks he's doing something good. Mm-hmm. I don't, as much as it looks to me like it's something hateful and hurtful and just anger. Mm-hmm. I have to imagine that in his mind, he's the hero of his story. He's out there crusading and saving people. And that's something that like I kind of bring to, or try to bring to my stories. And what really brought me when I started writing to playing around with the notion of truth is that if you look at each individual person, the way they tell the story of their lives is they're the hero. And every action they take in their mind is good, unless they are trying to be the villain, which I'm sure there's a couple people out there who do that. But it's just something that I find interesting thinking about of beyond just religion, because I don't want to linger there. But But in every action that we take and that we do, it's motivated by what we think is right based on the truth that we believe. But that isn't an objective truth.
Well spoken. It sounds like, are you a writer?
Someone said I should do that once. I don't know, though. I don't think I can make it.
Maybe so. Andy, anything to add to that?
Well, it's kind of anything, any group of people are going to have that, whether it's the ethnic minority that staunchly believes in the importance of teaching their kids a culture and not letting them experience, like not letting them stray outside that culture. Like we were listening to an East Indian comedian last night, and he was talking about how his dad sent him to school with a purple turban. And yeah, is it a turban? Yeah, it's a turban. Or what's the Sikh head wrap? I think it's called a turban. I hope I don't get stoned for this.
I think it is, or a wrap. I think I've heard it called.
It's anyways. So his dad, like for his dad, that was the most normal thing in the world, and the idea of something outside of that never occurred to him. And the kid, the comedian, he's making jokes, so he's saying, obviously he got picked on and beat up horribly, but at the same time, it kind of sparks this question of so if the dad had thought outside of his own perspective, his own truth, could he have spared his son a beating, or was it more important for the son to see his father live up to his version of the truth so that he can be taught morals or things like that? It's this really fine line that as parents, it's our job to show our children not necessarily a belief, or not I guess to show them the importance of believing in something. Not necessarily a specific belief, but belief in itself, whether it's faith, whether it's politics, whether it's, social mores, etiquette, things like that. You have to believe something to show your kids the importance of believing something as well. Someone once said that if, we were talking about, because we don't really do religion in our house, we don't do any of that kind of stuff. And so someone was like, well, if you don't teach your kids something, someone else will. And you have no control over what they teach, not only the religion in itself, but also all of the accompanying mindsets and perspectives that go with it. So just taking it back to our good friends, the Westboro Baptist Church, imagine if someone one of them came along and somehow managed to talk my kids into becoming Westboro Baptist because I had never taught them anything. I had never taught them any sort of truth or a stance on anything. So it's something that, well, at least as parents, we've got to be aware of it. When you're a parent, Stevie, more than cat buttholes, you'll understand. Dude.
So that's actually some news. I'm pregnant. No.
Really? Is it mine?
It might be a butt baby. Well, you know what? I take that back. That's too far for the Fiends podcast, guys. Yikes. So we are getting more and more Stevie every day.
One of the things about, he's talking about parents and whatnot and parents educating, but one thing that I think is particularly relevant in surrounding this topic in today's day and age is the gatekeepers to that sort of truth and that education. So, using parents as a springboard, but where we get those sources of education and information from, and how much trust to place in them, and what the responsibilities are for individuals as consumers versus the people who are espousing that news, that information, that truth and whatnot, to fully disclose, and how much due diligence and all of that, which is of course a topic that is really relevant right now.
Yeah, absolutely. An interesting example of that was, so I watched the Jim Jeffries show. It's sort of like one of those news talk shows. And he did this interview with this guy in Australia an Australian Jew, I think, and who was talking about like Muslims and all that stuff. And the way he cuts the show together, it makes the guy look really bad. But then the guy posted on YouTube, here's the actual interview. Here's what I actually said, without the clips being, put together a specific way. And it totally changes the tone of the interview. In fact, the super racist thing that he said didn't actually get said. It said 5 minutes later or something, And so literally anything, whether it's news, whether it's religion, anything that someone else is feeding you that you're not getting from the source directly for yourself, it's going to have their perspective on it. Even literature, even science, no matter what it is, unless you are literally going to the source, it's going to be not tainted, because tainted has a negative connotation, but maybe colored would be the word, because it's going through the filter of the person who is translating. And so like a lot of people really point to that, as Christians who've strayed so far from the original intention of the Bible, right? The Bible, when it was written, had a specific message in mind. And now, thousands of years later, people who believe it are totally in a different direction. How do they get there? Well, it's because someone translated it, or many someone's translated it. And so they ended up all of those translations put a filter between the raw source material and the end product.
But even if you go to the quote unquote source, just using, an example of even the source can end up being an unreliable narrator, because, and this is something this is just my personal belief on most things, but I believe the truth, the genuine objective truth, is something that is almost impossible to be reached, because every person is so different. And I mean, take for example, a fight breaks out in a bar, and you have two people who saw it happen. One person is a friend of one guy, one person is a friend of the other. Both of those people saw it happen, but their truth that they saw happen equally from the same distance, whatever, they're going to present that story in a very different light, just like the two brawlers are going to present their stories in a very different light. And all of that is truth from the source, but it's all very different.
Yeah.
And so that's something that, again, I try to bring into my stories a bunch, because I think things like that are interesting, where you can have two people who say very different things happened or occurred, and you hear them both talk and you're like, you both sound like you're like you really believe what you're saying, and it's probably because they do. And that's interesting to me.
Yeah, another example of this, I would say that there are some objective truths out there. So for my day job, I still write articles and website, pieces and blogs and stuff like that. And so a lot of times I go straight to scientific studies, like someone posts in the Journal of Nutritional Science or the Journal of Health and Fitness or whatever the scientific journal is. And all this stuff has been peer reviewed, and it's gone through, the many layers of the double blind study with the placebo, things like that. And there is a certain degree of coloration according to who's doing the study and their reason for doing the study, and obviously what they predict the outcome will be. At the same time, it's supposed to be filtered through sort of a lens of objectivity, because it's science. It's supposed to be raw data. But then I take this data as my job and translate it into something digestible for the average consumer. So let's say I'm writing an article on how turmeric is amazing, right? Random, off the top of my head.
Turmeric is an amazing spice, though.
There you go. Exactly. I find a study that says turmeric can help, reduce cancer. Right? So I translate that. I put that into something that people can understand. I find a study that says turmeric maybe could be effective for heart disease. I translate that. But again, it's gone through my filter of what I'm trying to say. I want to paint turmeric as amazing. So I translate the raw data using words like it may prove effective, as opposed to may prove ineffective, which is exactly the same as may prove effective. It's gone through my filter. So taking things from even the source, like you really do have to drill down and find where the source was to find the most, the rawest data possible for whatever it is. Stevie, what wisdoms do you have to add here?
I guess I don't really understand everything that we're talking about, to be honest with you. Yeah, that's it. I really don't. So
Elise picked a terrible topic.
To me, the way I would explain what we're talking about is, it seems so. What am I trying to say? So
here, think about this, Steve.
Is there any truth to our perception? What would we describe as truth? Am I on the right track here?
Well, I think you need to go into this discussion knowing that there are certain immutable truths, right? Gravity, right? No real way to interpret that, right? There are absolutes, there are constants.
Okay.
Elise, I see that look.
I mean, have we rectified electromagnetic theory and general relativity yet? Because last I heard we were still struggling with that.
That's above my pay grade. I just know that, gravity up, down, that's pretty much it for me.
Okay. Sorry.
Right. So there are some basic principles that we can rely on as immutable truths, right? Because this is cold, hard data that has been, that is hopefully free of any filtration. That's the intention of science. Science is supposed to be unfiltered information only. Hate it, love it, whatever it is. Obviously, there is some degree of, interpretation, but everything else in life is perspective. You have things that you believe to the core of your being. You believe that hitting women is wrong, right?
Of course.
Why?
That's the way I was raised in this country.
So your truth is this thing. Now, for someone else who was raised in a country like, let's say, somewhere in the Middle East, where hitting women is totally acceptable, their truth is totally different.
Yes.
Now, again, it's shaped by their perspective. So you have to go into every encounter with other people knowing, number one, you have a truth, they have a truth.
Okay.
Your truths have been shaped by your perspectives. Mm-hmm. So they're definitely 100% going to be different. There will be some commonalities.
I see what we're talking about now.
And your job as a human being is to find a way to understand their truth to the best of your ability. Like, let's say you talk to a Nazi. You're definitely not going to agree with everything they say, right? But if they say,
I'm going to put out most things.
Well, no, because a Nazi can also believe that hitting a woman is wrong. They just happen to have this 5% of their belief that is Nazism, which is wrong. But then they believe that, giving money to the poor is good and being a productive member of society is good. So a lot of people, they're defined by a percentage of their beliefs.
Yes.
And so we need to understand everybody's truth as a whole, find the things, I would say, that we can relate to, that resonate with us, that are sort of, that harmonize with our truth. And that's how a relationship is formed. And that's how we learn to see the world at large.
Thank you. So now I can actually put in my 2 cents. Being a guy who does a lot of self-development books, like that's all I listen to, I do this. I do it all the time. The problem is, and I think everyone has a problem with this, who has been awakened to this idea of actually realizing that someone has a different set of truths, is not letting their emotions get into the way. And then also trying to remember that fact, and I have trouble with this. And I would think that Texas in general has a problem with this, being so stuck in its southern ways. We were talking about, being awakened to this sort of thing. And I just feel like, me coming from such a small town in the very south of Texas, that it was almost a miracle that I broke away and was able to become open-minded to this sort of stuff. But even I, if I meet someone who I find just freaking frustrating, and it's even I will forget, these things. So but yeah, is that more on track with what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, there was no, the whole idea of the discussion originally was just sort of looking at this truth versus perspective thing. So it went wherever we wanted it to go.
Well, my thing is, how do we figure out what is truth besides, already set laws? It's like math, where we have to predetermine, what these variables are before we can even have a discussion about it,
And I think that's kind of an interesting point to bring up, because I feel as though in our society right now, because we have a lot of misinformation and a lot of debate as to what's the truth, where are we getting it from, what's the actual facts of a situation, et cetera, there is that sort of inclination to just say either there is no truth, hands up in the air, who cares, or the inclination to say, well, everyone has their own truth and you go live your truth and I live my truth, which is good, but when taken too far, I sometimes wonder if it crosses over a threshold of, you're going to go off and live your truth and I'm going to go off and live my truth. And therefore we all stop looking for that objective truth, or looking for the facts of a situation, or those data points that you were bringing up earlier that you go back to and drill into. And now I sometimes wonder if people are being presented with this feeling of, well, the only truth that matters is my own, so why should I go out and seek anything that could contradict that or question that, or even the real sources, the basis for it.
Yeah. And like you were saying, everyone's like, I'm going to live my truth, you live yours. It creates this divide. And once we stop reaching outside the divide to seek to understand other people's truths, that's when the divide becomes, a gap, a chasm that is so hard to bridge. And that's why you have so many people, clashing against each other, whether it's race, religion, gender, politics, sexuality, philosophy, morality, whatever it is. There's people who are just arguing all these kinds of things, and their stances, some may be right, some may be wrong, some may have a bit of right and a bit of wrong, others may be mostly right, mostly wrong, whatever the case is. But as soon as we stop trying to see from other people's point of view, other people's perspectives, then we lose that connection that makes the human relationship work.
Interesting. You know what, guys? It's already 8:11. Can you believe that?
Yeah. It's 6:11, so
Oh, 6:11, yeah.
It's
And
9/11.
in your perspective, right?
No, my truth, Steven.
Your truth.
My truth says it's 6:11.
You want to fight about it, Andy? I'll just need a stepping stool to get up there. So real quick, I had a quick question for Miss Kova, and that is, I love the idea of what we were talking about today, even though I was a little lost, but now I am found. Could you explain what it has to do with your books? Maybe give us an example of how you use it as a theme?
Yeah, so I've used it throughout all of my series in different ways. In my first series, it was a single point of view character, and throughout the series, where she starts, the empire she lives in is at war, and she's very much fed one perspective of that war, which is from the empire, from the conqueror's perspective. And she ends up being conscripted into the military service. And so she goes to the front lines and she sees the war for herself. And there is that sort of awakening moment of, oh, not everything is exactly how they painted it to me. And throughout the series, there is that sort of theme of what she infers and believes is true isn't always what's actually true. She just believes it is. And as the reader, you kind of go on that journey with her because you only get her perspective. In my Loom saga, where I write from different perspectives, I think what a good example is there is a dragon king, and I reimagined dragons for that series, so they're humanoid-esque. But there's a dragon king, and it's a split world, and the world below is based on logic and reason and science, and the world above is based on magic. And the world above enslaves the dragons, basically slave the world below. But the Dragon King is made out to be this ruthless, terrible person. And then you get his point of view in book 2. And through his point of view, you learn that the relentless pursuit of innovation that was occurring on Loom in the world below was stripping the world of its natural resources to a point that it couldn't sustain. So without some of the things that Yevon implemented that stinted their innovation that you always saw through the eyes of the original cast as being this really negative thing, without him doing that, Loom would have ultimately destroyed itself. And so that's kind of the weaving of, you have the characters' truths who grew up on Loom and who see Yevon one way, and then you have Yevon's truth in a very different perspective.
Like Doctor Doom. I love that when they did that in the comic books, where they actually had, I think it might have been Tony Stark or something, or Doctor Strange. He goes to a future where Doctor Doom actually wins. He defeats all the heroes and wins. And it's a utopia. And so the Doctor Doom character, he's like, I have this vision for the future of my country. I don't remember what it's called. And in it, the world is perfect. Everyone's happy. There's no discontentment. But his methods, because it's the heroes versus Doctor Doom, obviously the heroes see his method as bad. But then when they presented that, it was an interesting question, both for the character Doctor Strange or whoever saw it, and then for the reader of that particular comic book. Is allowing Doctor Doom to virtually enslave his people, to be a benevolent dictator, and ultimately make the world a better place, the right choice for them as a hero for the situation? Or is it better to fight him, even though knowing that doing so will keep the people in sort of shitty situations? And so it presented this moral question that I really liked. It was unique for comic books.
Awesome. Man, we really destroyed this topic. We just went every angle in our perspective, in our truths. Should we get to the reading? Because fans get
Absolutely.
mad when we don't do the reading.
I'm really nervous for this one, guys. I'm not a good reader.
You should be.
Okay, I'm assuming Vi or V is the female character.
Vi is the female character. Actually, Vi is female. Andrew is male.
I feel like that's kind of my role, like automatically.
And Aline is also a girl.
All right, so Stevie, why don't you do the narrator? I'll do Andrew and Aline.
Can you share my screen real quick?
Are you doing something that we don't?
Nothing nasty. Did anyone else know that you could do a freaking black background on Word?
Yes.
Jesus, I just learned like 5 days ago, and I about screamed into my computer screen.
For me, the blue background is a huge part of what makes Word.
Are you
Your
serious?
background is blue. Mine is gray.
What do you mean gray?
Well, so it's gray, but it's got that little hint of blue.
No, dude, you got to go black. Once you go black, you never go back. I'm telling you, it's so much easier on the eyes.
No, I refuse.
You're doing it. I'm sorry.
Your truth is a lie.
Whoa, we can just throw that in there every time now. Okay, so I'm ready. Elise, do you want me to narrate? I'll just destroy your pronunciations.
I don't mind narrating if that's easier.
Okay.
If you want to play a girl.
I always play the girl.
Well, then you can be Vi, and then there's one other person who talks who's just a spice seller, and I can be her.
All right, perfect.
And who is Vi? How is she?
Vi is the crown princess.
Okay, so she's like girly.
She's gonna sound princessy.
Crown princess who goes out into the woods and kills things.
Oh, okay.
Ooh. And what about Andrew?
Andrew is kind of awkward, a little soft-spoken, definitely a fish out of water in this situation. He's come from the capital of the empire, and they're in the most recently conquered land.
Good. I got this.
Okay. I am ready when you guys are.
Take it away, Elise.
All right. They wound around the many unorthodox structures of Sorghum, some short, some tall as trees, some made of masonry, others carved woods, and most magicked into existence with the help of groundbreakers. Vi did her best to point out things along the way to Andrew. In the back of her mind was her brother's letter. He was important, and she had to be on her best behavior. She'd done an admittedly poor job of it so far, so perhaps she could recover some ground today. There was an amphitheater to the north of town where most of the performances and lectures for the solstice would take place. The area around it was mostly residential, unused for most of the year, but built with wide roads and space to accommodate the city converging on the spot for those special times. That made it a logical place to pop up the market for the solstice.
It's even larger than last year.
Vi praised.
Mother says it's the biggest year yet. The merchants filled all the open space here. They're overflowing. Some are even forced to stay back by the main road. I can't imagine how full the city will feel when others come in for it.
Many of the smaller towns and cities in Shaldan poured into Sorghum for the solstice events.
What do you think?
Vi asked Andrew as they started down the makeshift stalls.
It is very different indeed.
Different? In a good way?
She tried to lead him along.
I think so. It's a shame your brother will not arrive before this festival is over. I do think he would enjoy seeing the collection of so many cultural notes.
Vi folded her hands before her thoughtfully. She'd never thought of what her brother would think of the market, of anything in the north, really. It had always been such an impossibility for him to be present that she never even considered what he'd enjoyed about the life she'd lived.
Does my brother enjoy learning of different cultures?
Vi knew the answer already, but she was curious what Andrew would say. How closely he positioned himself to the royal family?
Oh, incredibly so. He practically bounces off the wall when a new batch of texts arrives from the library in Norrin, Haston, or sent from you. Especially if it's sent from you.
As Andrew spoke, he looked nowhere in particular, eyes darting from stall to stall. His words were fond, but those eyes were distant. Did he care for her family or not? Vi couldn't put her finger on the answer.
Do you spend...
Oh, look at that.
Andrew interrupted her. More like hadn't even realized she'd started speaking.
Now that is something Prince Romulan would find fascinating.
Andrew wandered off toward a leather worker's wares. Vi stared in his direction but was stopped by a hand on her sleeve.
There's a Western spice cellar.
Aline pointed in the opposite direction. Vi looked between the two locations.
Unless you'd rather go with him.
She was curious what Andrew thought her brother would find so fascinating. There was an uneasy feeling about the notion that Andrew might know things about Romulan she didn't, merely by virtue of his usual proximity to her brother. That fact soured her stomach.
No. He'll be fine on his own for a moment. Besides, I want to get Uncle Jack something.
I thought you might.
Aline hooked her arm with Vi's, leading her toward the stall. A woman sat in a folding chair surrounded by baskets that Vi recognized as Northern make, but filled with the bright colors and smells of the West. There was a pile of what looked like sand next to small, hard black nuts. Vi didn't know what half of it was for, but she did know Jax loved almost all of it. Whenever he prepared food with these spices, it had the most magical taste. Hello, young princess.
Who's Sarah?
That should be Aline. Typo.
I'm
I
not
pulled
a
it off an old.
princess.
Sarah, Aline insisted.
I'm a future chieftain.
Good day.
Vi gave a small nod of acknowledgement, ignoring how exactly the woman had identified her as a princess. She wasn't wearing any sort of circlet or other royal regalia, though perhaps proximity to Aline was enough.
May I have a scoop of this one?
Vi pointed to what appeared to be a coarse, ground, reddish spice blend. Do you have your own bag, or will you need one?
I shall need one.
The woman took a metal scoop from a small bucket at her side and filled a tightly woven satchel with Vi's selection. The bag plumped and their nostrils were assaulted with the tangy aroma. She tied it off at the top with a short length of twine.
How much?
Vi fished out a few coins from the pouch at her side. For the crown princess. Nothing. The woman handed her the bag and sat back in her chair, a thin smile on her weathered lips. Vi continued to ignore the slightly unnerving feeling she was getting from the merchant, focusing instead on extending out a thin silver coin.
I can't possibly take something without payment.
Seeing you is payment enough. The woman's beady black eyes looked her over from top to toes. Vi's arm went slack. I heard the stories, but I had to see it with my own two eyes. You really do look just like her, our dear late Princess Fiera.
My grandmother?
The woman nodded. You have her hair, her voice, her blood, and her fire, too, from what I hear. Vi bit back a correction. One of the reasons she needed to learn the magic of light from Sarah and Tavin was to keep that illusion alive, that she was a fire bearer like her predecessors. It gained her far too much favor in the West to allow the perception to slip. Still holding out the coin, Vi tightened her elbow and extended it further.
Truly, I insist.
Very well. I shall consider it a boon from our princess returned. The woman leaned forward and took the coin from between her fingers. Do you have her tastes as well? Do you like Western spices?
I enjoy cuisine from all across the Empire.
Romulan
sorry.
would be proud of that response, Vi decided. She'd have to tell him about it in her next letter. But no, there would not be a next letter. She would merely tell him in person. An odd rush overtook her. The woman hummed, and Vi got the distinct feeling that she saw the response for the politically approved statement that it was. Well, perhaps when you are in the West enjoying our cuisine, you will also enjoy other aspects of our culture.
I am sure I will.
Vi made a motion to leave. Perhaps a curiosity shop.
A what?
It was Aline who paused now, clearly intrigued. A curiosity shop, the woman replied, answering Aline but continuing to stare directly at Vi. Her eyes felt like they would never leave her for the rest of her days. In the West, fire bearers among us with power to peer among the mother's lines of fate and look into the futures will sell this ability to those who seek them out. The places they use their future sight for profit are called curiosity shops.
Can you see the future?
Aline asked eagerly.
We should go. Doris is waiting.
Vi stopped the conversation there. She'd had enough talk about future sight. She still hadn't told her friends or Uncle Jax about her visions. Vi was juggling too many things, too many secrets for her taste, and didn't want to stand here and be reminded of them.
Right.
Aline gave a small wave to the elderly woman, clearly not as unnerved as Vi.
Thank you.
You're very very welcome. Her black eyes stayed stuck on Vi. Should you ever decide to go west, seek me out at my curiosity shop in the crossroads. It has been passed down in my caravan for generations. The key to it is said to have been gifted from Lady Fiera herself. You may find it enlightening, princess. The lines of fate are wound so tightly around you that they could strangle you if you're not careful. Her voice had dropped to a whisper, but Vi heard it perfectly. The day suddenly felt far, far colder.
What is it, Vi?
Nothing.
If she insisted it firmly enough to Aline, perhaps she'd believe it as well. Vi plastered a smile on her face.
Nothing at all. Let's get to the Noru races. We don't want to keep them waiting, and there's only so much talking up Jamie can do.
Just as they were leaving the stall, so too Andrew was leaving his. He had a small satchel in his hands, though it was canvas, not leather. Whatever he has purchased was concealed within.
What did you buy?
He asked.
Some spices for Jax. What about you?
A little gift as well for when I return home.
A gift for whom? Vi wondered, but didn't get the chance to ask.
Shall we continue to these races?
Without another word on fate, future seers, or gifts, they did.
That was awesome.
Very cool.
I do have to get going pretty soon, but that was awesome, Elise. That was really
thank you guys for helping bring it to life. And sorry about that one typo. I definitely format and then fix typos in my formatted version.
No big deal at all.
I know how that goes.
And you read really well, so
thanks.
yeah, it was awesome.
I was reminded of the girl who does the narration for Throne of Glass.
Oh, okay. I'll take that as a compliment.
I think that's Kate Rudd. I could be wrong on that one, but she's one of the best known female narrators. You had a great narrative voice.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
And that voice was awesome too. Yeah. So Elise, where can people find you?
So everyone can find me pretty much everywhere, but the easiest place to go to is elisekova.com. So that's ELISEKOVA.com. And I have links to everywhere there. I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/author Elise Kova, at Elise Kova on Twitter, at Elise.Kova on Instagram. And you can follow me all the places. My website, elisekova.com, is the easiest way. And of course, hit that follow button on Amazon. Oh my goodness, it's a cute kitty.
Crazy. I think he just pooped in the sink.
No.
That's what I was saying. I gotta go because I'm dying over here. It stinks so bad. Oh, it's going crazy. Okay. Well, Elise, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I'm sorry your cat's going crazy.
Yeah, no problem at all. Did he poop in the sink? Oh, thank God. He just probably farting. All right. Well, Andy, anything else you want to finish us off with?
That's it. As far as I know, hopefully on Tuesday night, we've got the one and only Michael J. Sullivan coming on for a special podcast. Next Thursday, we've got Jeff Kohanic from yesterday's podcast, and it's going to be awesome.
And both of those I will be on my phone doing because I will be on a road trip with Lisa. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I will definitely be posting on Collier's Conquerors. So be sure to join that. And damn, look at you got me. Can you see that? Where is it? Right there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I gotta watch that 'cause I'm allergic. So, but anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching the Fantasy Fiends podcast. I think this was a record timing. That wasn't a special. Oh, Sonny, the cat's name is Roswell because he looks like an alien. We think he's half Siamese, and he is freaking nuts. Like, no chill with that cat at all. Just he is fun to try and edit with. I'll tell you that. So again, what I was saying was this has been a record Fantasy Feeds podcast. That wasn't a special. We thank you all so much for your continued support. We love you all. We hope you have a great night, and we'll hopefully see you next Tuesday. But if not, we will see you Thursday. This is Stevie. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.
No